Howdy.
Boy, you a true fisherman, man. Get out on a New Year's Eve.
Okay. Here we go, baby. Well, we finally just got our first little bass of the day. Just a solid keeper right there, but gosh, it's so fun. I'm gonna let that guy go. Water is 42 degrees today, doing a little bit of cold water jerkbait fishing. So stay tuned, it's gonna be a good one. A lot of us know that jerkbaits are one of the best cold water lures that you can use. Whether you're fishing for largemouth bass, smallmouth bass, spotted bass, it really doesn't matter. But just because we know that doesn't always mean we know exactly where and how to fish a jerkbait in cold water. And today I wanna talk exactly about that. So you may be sitting there and wondering, okay, so why does a jerkbait work so well in cold water? The easy answer to that question is that it really mimics a dying shad, which you're going to see a lot during the winter. When that water temperature really starts to drop, you're gonna have some shad that start to die off. They get real lackadaisical, and a jerkbait really looks just like one of those dying shad. Another reason that a jerkbait works so well is that you can fish it for fish that are suspended, fish that might be sitting in 20 foot of water, but they're only 10 foot down. And you can fish that jerkbait just above them and they will actually come up to eat that bait. And there's not always a ton of lures that are gonna catch that suspended fish. And speaking of jerkbaits, there's a lot of great jerkbaits that are out there on the market. You have jerkbaits like this one. This one dives about 3 to 6 foot deep. And then you have jerkbaits like this one. You can see it has a little bit bigger bill on it. And that's actually going to dive about 6 to 10 foot deep. One of the most popular ones is the Mega Bass 110, whether it's a 110 plus 1 or plus 2. But the thing is about that bait is it is expensive. I mean, it's $24, $25. Is it worth it? I do believe that it is. Now, another jerkbait, and actually this is probably my favorite when it comes to fishing cold water, like water in the 40s, even in the 30s, is the Berkley Stunna Jerkbait. This is a jerkbait that was designed by Hank Cherry, and the reason that I like this jerkbait more than other jerkbaits on the market is because it's actually a slow sinking jerkbait, which means you cast it out there, it's gonna sink, and I'm talking very slow, right? It's almost suspended. This thing just very slowly goes down just like that. When you're fishing in cold water, fishing a bait that is suspended is extremely important. You don't want a bait that floats up. You want a bait that's at least suspended. But I've actually seen it at times where if you have a bait that slowly sinks, it will outperform drastically a bait that is just straight suspended. Earlier this year, I was actually fishing on a lake where that exact situation took place. And the thing was, I was fishing a Mega Bass 110 jerkbait, but I had put some different hooks on it, and those hooks were actually making that bait slowly sink. And I actually ended up losing that bait. Well, I got a new bait and I was too lazy to put on new hooks, and I was fishing that same bait, but it was suspended. And I started I wasn't getting any bites like for a long time. And then I realized, oh yeah, I had those different hooks on it. I knew that that bait was slowly sinking. It was literally night and day. I made the change with the hooks. That bait started sinking a little bit and I automatically started getting bit again. That is why I like the Berkley Stunna so much, is because it's designed to sink slowly. There's a ton of different colors that I really love in that bait. When you're having very cloudy conditions, I tend to like the opaque ones, the ones that you can't see through. And a lot of times I'm mimicking a shad and or a perch. Now, if I'm fishing in really clear water on a sunny day, I actually like to fish those translucent baits, those ones that you can see through, that it's a little bit harder for the bass to see in that clear water. I do want to let you know that you can pick up these Berkley Stunna jerkbaits that I just talked about, along with some other jerkbaits, all at sportsmansoutfitters.com. I love Sportsman's Outfitters. They typically have the best price on lures. And I actually had a guy who commented on one of my videos recently that said Sportsman's Outfitters customer service is freakishly good, which is great. That is what you want in a business. So check out the links down below. You can pick up some of these Berkley Stunna jerkbaits and will greatly help support the Bass Fishing HQ channel. Now, when it comes to where you want to fish a jerkbait during winter and during really cold water months, the biggest thing that I can tell you is you want to fish it around vertical structure. I cannot tell you and I cannot stress to you how important it is to fish near vertical structure. Now, vertical structure or very steep structure can come in a lot of different forms. One of the biggest, most popular ones is some sort of bluff bank. This is a bank where the main river channel hits right up against the bank and it creates vertical structure. Bass love vertical structure during cold water because they like to move up and down a lot and not too much horizontally in that cold water. Now, a lot of times the bass are going to be shallow even though they're right next to deep water. They may be sitting in 4, 5, 6 foot of water, but it's going to be immediately adjacent to very deep water. One of my favorite places to target with a jerkbait is a point that has the creek channel that hits right up against it. That point's going to kind of go up and it's just going to kind of create a ledge. And if you have some rock or maybe you have some wood on that ledge, that is a dynamite place to catch cold water bass on a jerkbait. Now, the biggest key to catching bass on a jerkbait in cold water is really being patient with the bait. You're not going to work this bait the same way you work it in the summer. A lot of times in the summer, I'm gonna make a long cast out there and I'm really gonna work this bait. I'm gonna twitch, 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 1, 2, 1, 2. That's the way that I like to work it during the summer. Now, if you work it that way during the winter, you're not going to catch fish. The biggest thing you want to do is let that bait sit there and pause for a long period of time. Some guys are going to do this very long. I mean, 15, 20 seconds, they're going to let that bait pause. I don't like to do it that long. At very most, I'm typically like a 7 to 10 seconds at very most. A lot of times you're talking 4 and 5 seconds for me. The other thing about working this bait is when you go to twitch it and hit it, you don't want to hit it as hard as you do in the summer. Like I just showed you, in the summer, I'm really snapping that bait. During the winter, it's a lot softer. If you remember that dying shad, it's not moving a whole lot. It's not jerking side to side real aggressively. It's just kind of moving up. So when you twitch it, just barely kind of pop that bait. Sometimes I'm just gonna do a little pop like the backhand like that or on the front. It's just a very small twitch. It's not an aggressive snap. That's extremely important in cold water. And I'm gonna show you guys the exact cast. This is exactly how I fish this thing every single time. So I'm gonna cast that bait out as far out there as I can. Now, a lot of times I like to make a really long cast, especially during the winter, because I want to get that bait down deeper. You can use a spinning rod, you can use a bait cast rod. I prefer bait cast rod. Usually I'm using 8 to 10 pound test on my bait cast rod. Make a long cast. The first thing you want to do, crank that lure about 10 times to get that bait down. And this is when I'm going to start my retrieve. Most of the time my cadence is a 2 twitch and a 1 twitch. That's just what I like to do. Sometimes I'll add a 3 twitch in there every now and then, but all right, so I'm gonna make a long cast. I'm gonna reel that bait down and I'm gonna 1, let it sit. 1, 2, let it sit. 1, let it sit. You can see that I'm fishing this extremely slow. Now, something that really helps me when I'm fishing this lure is in my mind, every time I hit that lure, every time I twitch it, I'm actually gonna say 0. And this is why, because I like to count while it's paused. So I'll go 0, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 0, 0. The reason that I count, especially when I'm first starting on a new body of water, is because I want to see when those bass hit it. If they hit it at 2 seconds, then I'm only going to let that bait pause for about 3 seconds the rest of the day. If they're hitting it at 5 seconds, then I might wait 6 seconds or 7 seconds. I always want to get a feel of when the bass are hitting it, because sometimes guys think that they have to work it so slow, but the bass are actually going to hit it only a second or 2 after it's been paused, and you can cover a lot more water and catch a lot of bass by not pausing it for 10 seconds every single time. Now, something that I don't hear a lot of guys talk about is while I'm letting that bait pause, I really want to keep my line as taut as possible. I don't want a ton of slack. I don't want to move that bait, but I want to make sure that my line is very taut, because when it's kind of straight and taut like that, you're going to pick up on those really light bites that you're going to get. Sometimes the fish are gonna about rip this thing out of your hand. But sometimes it's just gonna be a little tick. And here's another huge thing. When that happens, the way that you wanna set the hook with a jerkbait, especially if you're using light pound test, just reel in and then pull to the side. That is what I like to do. The biggest reason that I like to do it that way is because sometimes a fish, when they hit that bait on the pause, your line might start moving off, but they might be moving towards you. So reeling that bait in real quick is going to allow you to catch up with any slack. It's also gonna pull those hooks into those fish's mouth, and then you pull into them and it sets the hook into that hard skin that they have during the winter. Now, as far as equipment goes, like I said, I like bait cast rod and reel. This is actually an Okuma TCS jerkbait crankbait rod. It's a great rod. It's 7 foot in length. It's a medium power rod. It's a moderate action rod. It kind of has a parabolic bend to it. That's perfect when it comes to fishing a jerkbait. The reel, this is actually Okuma's brand new reel. It's called the Hakai. It's a phenomenal reel, especially when you're fishing light lures. Now, the one time that I will use a spinning rod when it comes to fishing a jerkbait is if I'm fishing some of those jerkbaits that are extremely light. Some of your balsa baits, like a Smithwick Rogue, it's a little bit of a lighter bait, and sometimes you can simply cast it better and further with a spinning rod than the bait caster. I hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial on how to fish a cold water jerkbait. Please subscribe to the channel, comment below, and I'll see you guys in the next video.